I'm here today to speak to you about Work Package 1 in SIFIDS project, which is the review and optimisation of shellfish data collection strategies for Scottish Inshore Waters, which is quite a mouthful. I'll get on to the detail of that as we go through the presentation. The main aim really for this work package is to develop efficient and statistically robust methods to analyse industry-derived data which could contribute to stock assessments. And for the purposes of this study, we are going to be focusing on brown crab, lobsters and scallops only. And before I go into a bit more of the detail about that, just a quick word about the contributors into this project. I'm based at the NAFC Marine Centre in Shetland, and we have about 15 years plus experience of data collection, stock assessment in inshore fisheries, and the support that we carry out for the Shetland Shellfish Management Organisation. And that also includes how to integrate that data into actual fisheries management processes as well, so thinking about the whole journey of the data through that work. And we've also teamed up with a company called All SPS Marine, and they're an international company who've been working in this field for over 25 years, and they have a lot of experience in developing systems for collection, particularly at sea. You might have come across some of the e-log systems that they've developed, and they're also very experienced in developing stock assessment and fisheries management programmes across a wide range of species and countries, so they're able to contribute quite a lot to this project. So what's the approach that we're going to take? First of all, it's important for us to have a review of what's currently ongoing, so we need to understand what base we've got currently, and that task will involve looking at how is data collected where, how often is it collected, how is the data stored, how is it analysed, what stock assessment tools are used, and how does that feed into current management. And it's really important for us to understand that from a resource point of view, but also from making sure that we look at examples of best practice. There is obviously a massive historical data set that's already there, and it's important that we take that into consideration when we're developing any future programmes to make sure that we can make them as compatible as possible and get the best out of the data that we have already. We're also going to be looking at alternative examples, looking at innovation from other countries and other fisheries, looking at some of the examples of data collection that you'll be hearing in some of the other work packages here and some of the other projects that have been ongoing throughout Scotland in recent years, to make sure that we're pulling together all the potential options that we might be able to use in the context of Scottish inshore fisheries. One of the important things that we need to do with that is to have an understanding of how they will work in Scottish fisheries. We've got an extremely diverse inshore sector, from one man in an open boat operating a few creels up to nomadic scallop vessels and these large super crabbers. So we need to be able to understand that we need methods that can work across that sector, and we also need to understand the data that comes from those vessels and make sure that the information that we get is representative and that we design a strategy that can incorporate all the different kinds of information that we'll get from the different sectors of the fleet. And also the natural variability that we see in inshore stocks as well. So it's very much a moving feast, and we need to make sure that if you're looking to design data collection strategies, that those things are taken into consideration. And another key factor also is to look at what's practical and sensible. We could come up with the best design in the world, but if it's not going to be cost effective or practical and efficient, it's not going to be useful, and it's not going to produce anything that can be integrated into effective management measures. So we need to take all these different tools and look at them in a practical way to make sure that we get the best, we optimise what can be done. So what considerations will we be looking at as we go through this process? The first one really is that we need to produce data that's fit for purpose, and that could be from a statistical point of view. A lot of stock assessment models require data to be collected in a specific way or a specific volume or certain parameters to be used, so we need to make sure that if we're proposing new methods that they capture the data in such a way that it can be used. And it also needs to be fit for purpose in what it aims to do. There's no point in collecting data that doesn't actually have a purpose within the context of the fisheries that we're looking at. So we'll be looking at, as I say, the quality of the data. Are we getting enough to facilitate the analysis that we need? Is it of a suitable spatial scale? So currently data collection might be done on an ICES basis. It might be really good to collect it on a metre by metre basis. What's practical, what's achievable? How often should we be collecting data? and how often should we be analysing it as well. It's not always about collecting data every 10 minutes. If you can't then analyse that volume of data into a useful output, we need to be practical on that front as well. And again, cost effectiveness. And one of the key things we'll be looking at as well is that the data collection meets management requirements. So we'll be looking at some of the key points that have maybe come up with the IFG management plans, and looking at what the key management aspirations are and trying to fit data collection and stock assessment programmes that will help to meet those objectives. And it's not all just about collecting data, it's about how you process the data. So that's going to be something that we'll be looking at also. How is the data stored? How is it entered? Is it remotely entered? Are there two people entering it? Is the big pile building up? How often is that data processed into a method that can be utilised by fisheries managers or stock assessors? Are there any pinch points in accessing that information? We'll also be looking at ownership. If, for example, Fisher collected data contains any spatial information that might be commercially sensitive, for example, how is that handled? Do we need to look at data sharing agreements, and at what level are they appropriate? Are they appropriate at the national level, the local level, individual vessel level? So we need to make sure that the data can flow as freely as possible, but that it's protected in commercial confidentiality where necessary. So those are the kind of things that we'll be considering as we go through the process. And why? The kind of question you come to is, what's the point in all this and what's the benefit? When the IFG management plans were all initially drawn up, a key theme through them all was that better data was required for inshore fisheries management, and that's not changed. So if we're going to look at a broader data collection and stock assessment, it's important that we look at that and we make sure that we try and get something that's the best that we can do with the resource that we've got. And the benefits of that: informed management. You can have management decisions that are tailored to individual areas, individual fisheries, individual fleet sectors, and from that, hopefully, the goal is sustainable inshore fisheries. And there's also the benefit of good inshore data, that the inshore fleet can be better represented in processes such as planning and potentially things like MPA management processes. So just to go over the work plan that we've got, we've really just started, and we've had meetings with Marine Scotland Science and also Marine Scotland Compliance to start getting an idea of what's currently happening in terms of data collection and stock assessment and how they process their information, which is, again, a bit of a changing situation, as a lot of the mechanisms are being reviewed and changed at the moment. Over the coming months, we'll be looking at that alongside any potential alternative methodologies and working with our partners in all SVS. And we'll hope to come with a range of options back to the project team before we do the full cost analysis to make sure that we're all moving in the right direction. And this work package is looking to finish up in October this year, which is a bit sooner than some of the other work packages, but I think it's hoped that the outputs of this might help develop some of the sampling strategies for particularly, I think, work packages 2 and 3. So that's where we are at the moment with that. And just a quick contact details from me. And again, apologies for being late.